Okay, now is it okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, madam.
Hello, sir.
It's fine. Maybe.
మీరు స్కూల్ కూడా ఇలాగే రావాలి షర్ట్ అండ్ సూట్ వేసుకొని. మీరు ట్రెండ్ క్రియేట్ చేయాలండి మీరు.
అదే సార్. ఇంకా వీళ్ళెవరు జాయిన్ అయినట్లేరు.
Yeah.
Only we are there, I think so.
Can the participants hear us?
I think so, if they join.
There are about 27 participants. Oh my God, like 20 participants.
Good.
Yeah. 21, yeah. But yesterday we had quite a few people, not quite a few, quite less number of people in the afternoon session. I don't know about the morning session though, but.
Yeah. Afternoon anyway, generally. Morning, good number were there.
Is it? Okay, good. Because on day one, I remember the morning session was pretty good. But yesterday, the afternoon session, when I came in, there were like only a handful of people. And
actually, he has given excellent, actually, the other speaker, Murthy garu.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I got to tell you one thing.
Yeah, Clifford joined, I guess.
Right. Okay. Right.
Hello, good morning. For you, I think good evening.
He's adjusting his phone, I think. He's adjusting his speakers.
Hello, Cliff. Professor Cliff. Hello.
Hello, Professor Clifford.
Hello.
I'm not hearing you, so let me work a little bit with my audio, please.
Fine.
Sure.
So,
there we go. That is better. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4.
Can you hear me now?
Fine. Yeah.
Perfect.
Great.
Loud and clear.
Good.
It's clear.
So let me practice sharing if I can.
Yeah.
Sure.
And you should see my...
Yeah. It is
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Perfect. And I'll practice advancing the slides.
Please.
There we go.
Yeah.
Slide 2, slide 3. Fantastic. Okay, I will stop sharing.
Great.
Perfect.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, Dr. Brahmananda.
Warm greetings, Mr. Professor Clifford Glanch from GITAM University, India.
Good morning.
Pleasure.
Sir.
Good morning, Brahmananda, sir.
Morning, madam.
Morning, Dr. Brahmananda.
Morning, sir. Morning.
Morning.
Is that your laboratory that you're sitting in, Mr. Glens?
I wish it was my home, but it is a phony backdrop taken from the internet. If I showed you my home office, you'd be appalled at how messy it is. So My wife wants me to go back to my office so I can clean up, so she can clean up in here.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dinesh sir.
Morning, Dr. Seth. Morning, Dr. Seth.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Very good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Professor Clifford. Am I audible?
Good morning.
You are
Perfect.
audible, clear.
Very good.
I understand Professor Gupta is yet to join.
Yeah, his is after Cliff, so he can join a little, maybe.
Okay.
He said he'll be joining, but we'll see.
Okay. Brahma sir, you love reading, huh?
These are all my dad's books, sir.
Okay.
It is all Mahabharata and Ramayana.
Wow.
Oh,
I thought they were encyclopedias or something.
I think still 5 minutes to go.
No problem.
I request all the participants to fill that attendance form which is posted in the chat box.
मीटिंग चल रहा है 10 मिनट बाद आएगा
Fill the attendance form which is posted in the chat box. The session is going to start soon.
Okay. So, okay. Good morning, my dear audience. This is Ratnamala, convener of International E-Symposium on New Frontiers in Chemical Sciences. It is a glorious moment to extend warm wishes to everyone on behalf of Department of Chemistry, School of Sciences, GITAM Bengaluru. I convey my heartfelt gratitude to all the eminent speakers, delegates to be here on this occasion, and also most humbly, I thank our management for providing an opportunity of this kind to our department. Today's schedule brushes on the spectrum of exciting and benefiting themes that throw light on cybersecurity in chemical sectors. Cybersecurity is an important topic, and it is interestingly a central factor in modern risk management in industry. It is not just about the managing the risk, but also a matter of personal responsibility. I ensure today's sessions are fruitful and profitable to everyone present here. Before we begin the session, I would like to express my warm regards to Professor Dinesh Seth, Director, School of Technology, GITAM Bengaluru, who is sincerely committed to make this event a success. Sir, I would like to request you to address the audience and make the moment memorable. Over to Professor Dinesh Seth.
Thank you very much, madam. Thanks for having me here in this symposium. Good morning, one and all. I welcome distinguished speakers, organizers, and participants for being a part of this symposium. These days, interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary subject treatments have become the need of hour because industry and mankind have been facing unprecedented challenges. In this tough time, companies, they don't want to miss any opportunity to make money through unlawful means. In fact, it is not uncommon to hear during this COVID period time that one country is alleging another country that, okay, you are stealing my secrets. But this is not a new phenomena. Way back in 2011, hackers targeted about 48 chemicals and defense companies, and popularly known as nitro attacks. Computers of these industries were infected by a malicious software, poison ivy. Stolen information for formulas, design documents, and information about the processing details. Most of the infected machines were from the countries like USA, Bangladesh, England, India. These cyber attacks were aimed at industrial espionage, collecting the intellectual property for the competitive advantage and for seeking economic mileages. But the details of those industries were not disclosed completely. So there is an urgent need to enlighten the chemical community about the nature of such cyber attacks. So the theme of this symposia is very, very contemporary, very, very relevant, very, very timely. I wish you good luck, best wishes, and I hope that this symposium will be adding value to participants and organizers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Dinesh Seth, for giving the valuable and informative remarks. Now I request Dr. Brahmananda, Head of the Department of CSC, to hand over the session. Over to Brahmananda, sir.
Good morning, one and all. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers and the conveners for conducting this symposium. Even though it is being done from chemistry department, I was very much thrilled in looking into that cyber security in chemical sector is the agenda for of today's talk. Yes, cybersecurity is not only just about protecting or securing our IT infrastructures or preventing banking frauds or securing national defense systems or government repositories. Okay, so it also needs to see that the chemical ecosystem also should be protected well. So even the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, has come out with a framework, okay, to see that how actually the whole repository should be there and how actually we need to protect the ecosystem of the chemical sectors and all. So how actually to identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Okay, so the frameworks of the functionalities of the cybersecurity, all these things and all. So it plays a major role, okay, in seeing that not only the inventions, what they are doing, also to protect those things to going to bad hands. Okay, so this is very much required. Okay, and if at all by mistake, it's not just about hackers or the business counterparts trying to steal the data. Okay, it is also about knowingly or unknowingly, intentionally or unintentionally. Okay, technically, okay, manipulating few things and also causing risks. Okay, it need not be only by the enemies or counterparts. It may be within the organization also. Okay, and also if any of the uh, people who are unhappy in the organization, okay, also may try to do this. So there is a very good framework, okay, with recording all these aspects. Okay, it is all about how actually we secure the whole thing and all. So for today's sessions, we are having two eminent persons, Professor Clifford Glantz and Shri Nikhil Gupta, Gauri Shetty. So hope the session will be very nice, okay, and informative. So I request Dr. Vikram Baswa to give the brief introduction about Professor Clifford Glantz, okay, and take over. Thank you, all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brahmananda. It gives me an immense pleasure to introduce the first speaker of the session, Professor Clifford Glantz. Professor Clifford Glantz works as a project manager with the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory's National Security Directorate. He did his bachelor's in both physics as well as in atmospheric sciences from the State University of New York, Albany, New York in 1979. Then he went on to do his master's in atmospheric sciences from the University of Washington, Seattle, Washington State in 1982. Mr. Glenn's research work focused on critical infrastructure protection, risk management, cybersecurity, consequence assessment modeling, and emergency management. He is the founding chair of the United States Department of Energy Subcommittee on Technical Analysis and Response Support, STARS, and he is on the editorial board of the journal Global Security, Health, Science, and Policy. Domestically, Mr. Glenn's work is supported by the United States Department of Energy, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Defense, Department of State, and other federal agencies. Whereas internationally, his work is supported by the International Atomic Energy Agency, the European Union's Chemical, Biological, Nuclear, and Radiological Risk Mitigation Center of Excellence, and the United Nations Interregional Crime and Justice Institute. He has authored over 90 technical publications and presented over 150 conference presentations. He has won several awards for his research during his 38-year tenure at the National Laboratory. Today, he's with us here to give a talk on cyber and blended security for the chemical sector, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Mr. Glentz, the screen is yours.
Unmute, Cliff, Professor Cliff, please unmute yours. Fine.
Done. Thank you so much. Thank you for that excellent introduction. I am sharing my screen right now. It's a pleasure to be here today and speak to you through this virtual technology. I am looking forward to a series of workshops this fall that we're going to conduct on supply chain security for the pharmaceutical sector. That'll be another series of virtual workshops. I certainly miss my annual trip to India and my opportunity to meet my colleagues at GITAM University and at IICT Hyderabad and in Gujarat and throughout the country. It's disappointing that COVID-19 is keeping us from having the face-to-face contacts, but God willing, we'll be able to meet together next year, all of us appropriately vaccinated against COVID-19 and safe and happy and enjoy the sociable good humor of getting together and working face-to-face. So my presentation, which you should be able to see on your screen, is entitled...
No, sorry for the disturbance, Cliff. It is not shared yet.
Well, then I'll push the share button right there. And you should be seeing it shortly. Wonderful. Excellent. So my talk is cyber and blended security for the chemical sector, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I have borrowed this title from a 1966 movie by the great director Sergio Leone and starring Clint Eastwood. because the sentiment of the good, the bad, and the ugly certainly fits into what we are dealing with right now in the chemical security realm. So in my presentation, I'm going to start by talking about the ugly. I'm going to talk about recent security events with their adverse consequences that have arisen because of our new productivity enhancing digital technologies. Those technologies are great, but there's a dark side as well, and we'll talk about the ugly dark side. We'll then move on to the bad. I will talk about the various threat agents, those who are presenting a risk to our chemical facilities and our intellectual properties. I'm going to talk about the types of consequences we can experience from various attacks and the need to battle myths which keep us from aggressively addressing the chemical security issues that we're facing. And I'm conclude by talking about the good, because there are some general approaches out there that can help us address security threats and implement risk-based, cost-effective solutions. So we've gotten to this situation where there are significant threats that are affecting our energy, chemical manufacturing, medical, defense, and other critical infrastructures. And these threats seem to be growing with time, growing at an alarming rate. And of course, we've had the wonderful development of digital systems and the internet that has enhanced our lives and has enhanced the productivity of our research and the productivity of our chemical industry. And it has reduced operating costs and in many cases increased safety as well. However, the downside we face is the increasing risk associated by cyber and blended cyber and physical attacks. So it used to be traditionally that security was just a physical security problem. It was addressed by physical security specialists and involved standard gates and guards and locks on doors. And our chemists and chemical engineers played their role by locking their sensitive files in safes or locking their office doors. But security really was an issue that was relegated more to physical security professionals. Now, with the introduction of increased digital technologies, we have the cybersecurity threat that is affecting our sector and our research. And there's the risk of cyber attack in addition to physical attack. And there's also a blended attack, whereas a cybersecurity attack could be used to lower physical protection mechanisms. For example, a lot of our physical security now involves not only gates and guards, but it involves cameras, it involves alarm systems, many of which are connected through the internet and intranet to a central guard station. So a blended attack might involve a cyber intrusion into those digital physical protection systems to render them ineffective and make a physical attack that much more easy to carry out. Alternatively, there could also be a physical attack, a break-in, where our cyber or computer resources are stored. And that could allow adversaries to get direct access to our computer systems and be able to manipulate them without having to get through all sorts of digital security controls. So those are two aspects of a blended attack that we now have to be concerned with. And with these additional attack mechanisms, the role of safeguarding information and safeguarding assets becomes not only the job of the physical security specialist, but it also becomes the job of our IT specialists, our information technology specialists, our cybersecurity specialists, and also our chemists and chemical engineers and researchers and students, because everyone, as we'll talk about, has a critical role to play in this rich attack environment that we are now living in. So let's start off with talking about some of the ugly that is out there. I'm going to present a series of newspaper stories just to illustrate the magnitude of the problem. When I first started doing cybersecurity work in the 1990s and the early 2000s, it was the biggest challenge I had was getting company officials to recognize the potential severity of the cyber challenges that they were now starting to face. This day and age, that's not as much of a challenge because it seems like almost daily or weekly, there's a news story reporting the impacts of another cyber attack and its devastating consequences to various organizations. This first article I'm showing involves a major attack involving ransomware on a couple of US-based chemical companies. And in this particular attack, they suffered an inability to access a lot of their business information associated with their IT systems. Their systems were encrypted by the adversaries, and they were faced with the prospect of paying a substantial ransom to get their systems and get their data back online. Now, the company claimed that there were only limited interruptions in their operations, but if you read between the lines, limited operations mean that this particular ransomware attack did, to some extent, affect the operations of their chemical facilities and their ability to do processing. And a major concern we have is a ransomware attack that will affect the actual ability of a chemical organization to operate its control systems and to keep its material in a safe and secure environment. Several years ago, Symantec uncovered attacks targeting the chemical industry to steal information. And as we heard earlier, that is a significant problem that the chemical sector is recognizing, that their chemicals, their production processes, their intellectual property are all available, stored on digital systems, often with internet, intranet connections, and are therefore vulnerable to theft. For many criminal organizations or other countries that are competitors, it is so much easier to steal information than to actually do their own relatively expensive research. So that is a significant problem we're facing. The US Government Accountability Office did an audit on cybersecurity of US chemical facilities and found that there's an alarming level of vulnerability to cyber attacks, and the prospect exists of an attack that can cause chemical leaks or explosions, endangering property, and also human health and safety. So that is a significant concern. And we have an example of an actual attack that occurred in the summer of 2018. The Saudi Arabia petrochemical company, Aramco, was subject to a very significant cyber assault. Post-assault analysis indicated that this was probably being conducted by an adversary nation state, well-funded, well-planned attack on their resources. It had cost them many tens of millions of dollars to recover their business systems. But fortunately for Aramco, there was a flaw in the attack software. And as a result, the software's main target, which was to sabotage operating systems and cause massive explosions and destroy physical facilities, did not happen. It failed to complete that mission. But with a little bit more work, that could very easily have happened. And so this was a wake-up call to the entire petrochemical industry and others into the chemical sector, that this is an actual real issue. And you could have well-planned, well-executed nation-state sponsored attacks which could affect your company. And of course, in India, there is a recognition that this is a concern as well. This is a little write-up from the Institute for Defense Studies and Analyses in Delhi. And they too are concluding the potential for cyber attack on chemical facilities that could result in the release of toxic materials to the environment, or the theft, sabotage, or theft, diversion of material that could be used in developing a chemical weapon. So there is the recognition throughout the world, and certainly in India as well, that this is a significant issue that we have to address. So in my talk, I mention IT, information technology, and OT, operational technology. And it's important to understand that both are very important to maintaining cyber security. Information technology is what we're used to in our offices, our office computers, things that do business applications, email, authoring of documents, data analysis, data storage, inventory tracking. That's part of information technology. Operational technology is what we have in our manufacturing facilities, and also to an extent in our research laboratory. These are the control systems that have greatly increased the efficiency of our manufacturing processes. They control machinery, equipment, and assets. And some examples of this include PLCs, programmatic logic controllers, and SCADA devices, supervisory control and data analysis devices. And these are found in almost every critical infrastructure, providing control of critical processes. And there are a number of key differences when we want to do security, differences between IT systems and OT systems. IT systems are sort of discretionary in when you could use them. You could put an IT network down or a computer down for a couple of hours in the middle of the night, and it'll cause very little disruption, very little problem as you go through and do operating system upgrades and other upgrades, enhancements that are needed. OT systems are different. Often they have to operate around the clock throughout the year. If you have a chemical manufacturing process going on, you can't stop that process in the middle of the night to do a software upgrade and operating system upgrade. So that has to operate around the clock, and it is critical that it be operated. It can't accept delays. Another issue that we have associated between IT and OT systems is IT systems tend to have a relatively short lifespan. 2 years, 3 years, maybe 5 years. After a while, those IT systems become obsolete and are donated to schools and other institutions for use by students. But their usefulness in the industry environment and the research environment decreases because of the rapid expansion and improvements that are occurring in IT equipment. On the other hand, OT systems are very stable. It's very common to see operating control systems, operating technology that can operate for 20 or 30 plus years. Once in place and operating, it's often not cost effective to replace it with a newer device. So those are just some of the differences between IT and OT, which are very important for a security standpoint and a security control standpoint. So let's talk a little bit about the bad that's out there. So the threat of a cyber attack is growing for a number of reasons. Of course, there's the increased spread of digital devices, But we also see an increase in the sophistication of cyber attacks that are out there and the availability of attack tools. When I started working in the cybersecurity realm, we were concerned with hackers who were developing their own tools and using them to stage attacks. Nowadays, there's a whole dark web, a dark market, where people are selling or renting attack tools to other attackers. The newer the attack weapon, the more capable, the higher the price that they charge. And some of the old ones are actually available on the dark web free of charge, so that they are accessible to almost anyone who wants to play around with various cyber attack tools. So we have a wide availability of the weapons that attackers can use. It's extremely easy to mount an attack, and an attack can not only affect one asset on your system, it could also affect multiple assets on the system, and that could significantly increase the consequences, because backup systems and safety systems that you might rely on could also be compromised. The other key problem that we have is there's a relative lack of attribution and retribution. Attribution, it's very difficult to identify the attacker. Attackers could have a chain of servers that they operate through, so that it's very difficult, if not impossible, to trace the attack back to its origin. And even if you have a good idea of where it's coming from, it's very hard to get proof that can be demonstrated in a court of law to convict an attacker beyond a shadow of a doubt. And that means retribution is very difficult. You can't sue that attacker, you can't counterattack, because it's so easy for them to hide their trails or to frame someone else for an attack that they're conducting. We also have, as a problem, the very significant difference between the reward to the attacker and the cost that it takes them to mount an attack. It can be very inexpensive to mount a sophisticated cyber attack, and the reward that the attackers can get could far outsee their cost, making it a very attractive way to attack facilities. So what are attacker motivations? They run a very wide gamut. An attacker might want to disrupt operations. They might want to diminish your readiness, your emergency preparedness. They might want to damage or destroy resources in your physical plant. They might want to harm people, and they might want to damage the environment. They may just be interested in driving up your operations and maintenance costs. They might want to gather intelligence and steal personnel information that they could use for various purposes. Steal business sensitive information, of course, and divert resources, your resources, for their own gain. They might want to embarrass organizations, influence public opinion, influence the opinion and action of regulators and legislators, or just the opinion of the general member of the population towards your company or your government. So there are tons of different motivations that attackers may have. Now, these adversaries, these attackers, can come from a number of different camps. We have the traditional picture of a hacker working in their basement. That still exists, but is of less of a concern today compared to some of the other concerns we have. There's a concern that terrorists would use cyber and cyber physical blended attacks as part of their attack profile. And we have seen evidence captured from terrorist organizations that they are considering and planning to use cyber in future types of attacks. So that's something we have to be on guard against. The criminal involvement in cyber attacks has exploded. There's a tremendous amount of money that can be made through blackmail and ransomware. And so criminals are out there mounting attacks, and they're developing attack tools and selling them or renting them on the dark web. So we have to be concerned with criminals as well. Hacktivists are groups who are doing hacking or cyber attacks for political motivations, to embarrass an industry, to curtail industry activities. That is an issue. Nation states are something that is a very pressing issue now. Almost every nation in the world has a cyber offensive capability that they're developing because they know their adversaries are doing the same thing. And so we hear stories all the time about nation states that are potentially mounting attacks. The Aramco attack is one example. We're hearing stories about nation-sponsored attacks on pharmaceutical and chemical companies to steal information associated with COVID-19 research. So that is going on. Anything that involves a lot of money, political power, prestige, nations are involved in. And so we have to be very careful. We've heard earlier about insiders, the concern about insiders, disgruntled workers, and we're also going to talk in a little bit about non-malicious activities by insiders, insiders trying to do a good thing, but in the end opening a company up or an organization up to various cyber attacks by outsiders. So that is a concern as well. So when we talk about cyber attacks, we have to consider what the consequences are. And there are three different categories of consequences that we're concerned with: the loss of confidentiality, the loss of availability, and the loss of integrity. And we're going to take each of them in turn. So loss of confidentiality is the theft of information. It can be the loss of safety or security information, intellectual property, sensitive operational or business information, or compromise of personnel security, identity theft, or warning about your staff so that they could potentially be compromised in additional attacks. So that is a very important concern. But for the chemical sector, maybe even more important is the loss of availability. Are we threatened with the inability to access our business systems, our databases? And what is the cost to our organization and its operations and its research if we cannot access our business systems? What is the cost to our production if we cannot access our operational systems to keep our facilities up and operating in this digital age? And also, what is the cost of the inability to access our physical protection systems, our access control, our surveillance systems, our alarm systems? If those are compromised through a cyber attack, what is the cost to us if a physical attack is carried out and we are unable to stop it and we lose access to our products or our information? And of course, an example of this is ransomware attacks. Reports are out there of substantial increases in attacks on all aspects of critical infrastructure and the chemical industry as well, with a spike of activity of various ransomware attacks affecting the operation in our sector. And a little bit more information on the observed increase that's been going on in ransomware attacks. Even more important, perhaps, than the loss of availability is the loss of integrity. And in this sort of attack, we're dealing with consequences associated with the adversary actually taking control of our key safety systems, security, or operational systems. And in doing that, they can provide spurious, untrue information back to facility operators. They can disable safety equipment, and they could operate the equipment in such a way as to cause explosion or the self-destruction of that material, and resulting in a tremendous and long-term loss of manufacturing capability. So this is a very real issue for our chemical sector to consider. There are a number of ways that the attackers conduct their various operations. We've heard about viruses and worms, various malware that is used to cause cyber attacks. But there's also a lot of activity that involves exploiting coding errors, software bugs that allow an attacker to manipulate a product and to take control of a system just by exploiting coding errors, or taking advantage of poor defensive architectures. Often our architectures have gaps in them that allow attackers to easily penetrate through various layers of defense. Or we have poorly configured defensive architectures, like poorly configured firewalls that attackers can exploit and easily get through and access the sensitive resources that are further in within our systems. We're very concerned with zero-day attacks. Typical anti-malware, antivirus protections are designed to identify known malware, known attack vehicles. But the zero-day attack is something that the malware developers and operators have not detected yet and tagged as malware. So our malware, our antivirus systems are not able to detect zero-day attacks. And those zero-day attacks may persist for days, weeks, months, or years before they're finally detected and effective actions can be taken to neutralize them with existing protective measures. Social engineering is a very important venue for attackers. Phishing attacks is something you're probably well familiar with, where there's a message sent, an email with an attachment that contains malware, and the attacker is encouraging people to click on that. But even more insidious is spear phishing, where the attacker actually targets a specific individual or groups of individuals and can do research, can do a Google research, search, or look through LinkedIn and find out information about the people they are targeting and target their particular email message to be something that would really capture that person's interest, look harmless, and encourage them to click on it. So that is a major issue. Watering hole attacks are interesting websites where information is put that might be of interest to various professionals in our sector, and that can be salted with various malware, encouraging people to click on it and download malware to their systems. And of course, there's the advanced persistent threat. That is often associated with nation state attacks, where they're not sure if they want to cause a problem with your systems. But if your country is in conflict with their country and hostilities are pending or existing, they can then activate advanced persistent threat malware, which has been hiding in your systems for months or years, turn it on so that it's activated and can disable or damage your critical infrastructure. And of course, we've seen examples of that occurring in the real world in the energy sector. The Ukraine is one example of that. And also, we're very concerned about the potential for this advanced persistent threat in the chemical sector as well. So there are a number of myths that we have to get over to really work effectively to enhance our cyber and blended security. The first myth is that physical and cyber security are different and independent from each other. It's important to remember that blended attacks enhance the adversary's chances of success. And it's really important that physical and cyber specialists communicate. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a critical infrastructure facility and I've asked to speak to the physical security expert, and I've asked to speak to the person in charge of cybersecurity, have them come into the meeting room at the same time and watch them introduce themselves. These are people who should be working together on a daily or weekly basis, and yet it's my involvement, my arrival at a facility to do assessment that results in their meeting each other for the first time. In today's day and age, physical and cybersecurity specialists need to work together. And this has been sort of seen for years as a lesson in movies. The Italian Job is a famous 1969 movie involving a gold heist. And in that movie, it's the first bit of cinema that I know of that included a blended cyber physical attack. They did the physical robbery of the gold, and then they broke into the control system for the street lights. They turned all the lights green as the thieves roared through town. And then when the police came behind them, they turned the lights red, the traffic in the opposite direction green, and as a result stopped their pursuit. So we've seen cinema from starting as early as 1969 illustrating the threats that can be carried out using both blended cyber and physical attacks. And of course, I love the original Mission Impossible movie where we have physically enabled cyber attack where Tom Cruise hangs down from the ceiling and accesses a computer which is not connected to any other systems to steal information. So there's a long history of cinema showing us that such attacks are at least feasible. Another myth that we have to deal with involves security by obscurity. I've gone to a lot of chemical facilities and nuclear facilities for assessments, and I've had managers tell me that our system is secure because it's so complex, even if someone broke in, they could never figure it out. And that just isn't the case. We had an experiment that we did with one of our national lab partners a number of years ago, where we built a simulated and obscure control system. And for a chemical facility, we took a cyber person who had zero knowledge of chemical facility operations and practices, and we gave them a week to go in and to see what they could learn by playing around, trying to hack into the system and learning what components were there, and then going out to the internet and trying to gather information on these systems. You know, nowadays, when you purchase a control system, you can access its literature, its specifications, including information on its default passwords on the web. You don't have to actually have a hard copy of those controls. That makes it easy if you're having a problem finding your technical literature, but it makes things very easy for attackers. Within 3 days of giving that assignment, that cyber person came back to us and showed us that they could manipulate the system, the simulated system, transfer chemicals from one tank to another tank, and then overflow that second tank and cause an environmental spill and subsequent explosion. And so obscurity is not an effective measure of security. You have to assume that your attacker will invest the time and energy to learn about your system and to figure out how to control it, even if you think it's relatively obscure in its operation. Another issue, myth that we deal with involves firewalls and antivirus software that they'll protect us from an attack. As I talked about earlier, they will only protect you from viruses and worms that they have identified as malware. If it is a zero-day attack, if it's something that's not in their database of known malware, it's not going to help you. And a firewall is only as good as its configuration. Often firewalls are installed and set up with a very loose configuration to allow a lot of communication back and forth. But in doing so, they also allow the adversaries to craft an attack that makes it very easy to compromise a firewall. A firewall looks good on paper, but it has to be implemented by an appropriate professional for it to be effective in protecting your system. The other issue that we run into is that firewalls, defensive architectures, antivirus are all part of a defensive architecture. But a castle, even the strongest castle, does not provide an effective defense if there's no one in the watchtower. If you have no one in the watchtower, a single attacker with a pickaxe could come and spend a week and chip through a foot-long, foot-wide defensive wall and enter into the castle. The analogy for cybersecurity is we often do not have automated monitoring of our firewall logs and other defenses to see if there's an attack going on. No matter how good our firewall, no matter how good our defensive architecture, if you give an attacker unlimited time, eventually they will find a weakness in your armor, in your network, and be able to break in. So it's time and time again, I go to facilities that take great pride in their defensive architecture and their firewalls, but they are not monitoring their firewall logs. And so they have no idea who's trying to attack and how long that attacker could chip away before they finally get into their system. And then once in their system, can they detect it? That's another issue that they often run into. I often hear the myth that we do not have any insider threat. A lot of organizations claim that we do a good job vetting or reviewing our employees before they're hired. And then we have various staff and managers that would keep an eye on them. And if there's a problem with their performance, they would let us know and we would remove that employee from their position of responsibility. Operationally, if we look at the history of this, it's often very difficult for workers and managers to take one of their colleagues and point a finger at them and say, this person might be unfit for duty. They may recognize that person has a problem with alcohol, or perhaps drugs, or marital difficulties, or some other psychological difficulty, but they're trying to help that person get better. And if they remove that person from duty, they're concerned that that person will be stained forever and will never be able to recover. As a result, we often see a very high tolerance for insiders who in retrospect were giving significant warning that they were under distress, under duress, and a threat to the organization. In addition, one of the really critical sorts of insider threats we have are associated with non-malicious activities. That's when employees are trying to do something good and appropriate for the organization, but in doing so, they violate security policies and open up security vulnerabilities for the organization. One example of that I've seen is a control system that was relatively new and was encountering frequent problems that required a technician to access it, to reset it, and to get it to run properly. And because that system had to be running 24/7 around the clock, they would call the technician whenever they saw a problem. That technician would be at home and then have to travel into work in the middle of the night to do the 3-minute repair to get that system running correctly again. So what that technician did is he installed a modem directly to that particular control system on the inside of all of the facility's defensive architecture, electronic defensive architecture. And so when he got a call about a problem in the middle of the night, he can roll out of bed, open up his laptop, put in a command, fix the problem, and go back to bed. From his perspective, he was making things easy not only for himself, but he was improving the reliability of that system by reducing the downtime it took for it to be repaired. What he didn't realize and what the organization didn't realize is this modem that he connected up had a very simple password and could be cracked by an attacker in a matter of minutes using a password cracking code. So he had essentially bypassed multiple layers of security architecture within his organization. Again, non-malicious, but still opening a tremendous vulnerability for the organization. We also hear people talking about their upstream and downstream supply or product chain is secure. And one of the examples I have to illustrate where there may be a problem is we consider something that is very common, like a server motherboard that's a part of our IT and OT operating systems. It is a very complicated piece of equipment and containing thousands of microprocessors. And just by looking at it, you can't tell what it's doing and what it's capable of. In fact, you can strip away various layers of chips and components on the motherboard, trying to determine what chips are doing, what their purpose is. And what we've seen in the real world is every now and then you find a chip on this motherboard that no one knows what the heck that chip is doing. It is of grave concern that this may be put there by an adversary nation state as an advanced persistent threat, something that will do absolutely nothing, or it may be bleeding information out to the adversary on a routine basis, or it may be designed in times of conflict to cause a malfunction of the system or to give the adversary potentially control over your digital system. So we have to be very careful about where we're acquiring our equipment and exactly what that equipment is doing and what it's capable of doing. Downstream is also a great concern. We need in the chemical sector to know our customers, in part because we deal with chemicals that are potentially hazardous and weaponizable. A concern is that if you're manufacturing a potentially weaponizable chemical and you are selling it to a regular customer that you know is reputable, what happens if there's a cyber intrusion into your company's shipping database? That may not be considered a very sensitive system. But what if a terrorist organization broke into that system, hacked into it, and changed the delivery address of a legitimate order of weaponizable chemical? And instead of delivering it to the actual customer, they directed that it be delivered to their warehouse. The product can then be shipped to the terrorists instead of the intended recipient. And it might take days or weeks before the legitimate customer inquires about the location of their order. And by then, the terrorist organization has the product, they moved it out of the warehouse, and then it becomes a law enforcement nightmare in trying to figure out where that chemical might be and what that terrorist organization might intend to do with it. So it's very important to know our customers and to protect our distribution system, particularly when we deal with hazardous and weaponizable chemicals. So these are just some of the many misconceptions that exist for cybersecurity. And they arise for a number of reasons. There's a lack of awareness about cybersecurity. There's a lack of appreciation of the potential threat to the organization. There's a failure to recognize and search for the vulnerabilities that may exist in our system that could leave us open to a cyber or a blended cyber physical attack. And there's a failure to appropriately grasp the consequences of a cyber attack. So we can do an appropriate risk analysis and determine the need, the appropriateness of additional security controls. There's a lot of misinformation out there that we have to get around to help our organizations improve their security and raise it to an appropriate level. So now that I've talked about the ugly and the bad, let's talk a little bit about some of the good. It isn't all bad news out there. There are three keys to security, and it's important to keep all three in mind. It's important to recognize that there are people, processes, and technology, and all three have to be addressed in order for us to do an effective job in handling security. A common problem I find is people identify they have a security issue and they throw their money in technology and they don't bother spending the time training their people or developing the processes that are needed to enhance security. Risk-based decision-making is very important. It's critical for an organization to begin by framing its risk, to determine its risk tolerance, and to determine where it wants to be in terms of cyber and blended cyber and physical security risk. What can they accept based on the potential consequences that could exist? The next thing is to actually go into the specific risk assessment, to look at the threats that are out there, to look at the vulnerabilities, and to look at the potential consequences, and to characterize that for your critical assets. And then you move into the risk response mode. Is your level of risk that you've recorded, is that lined up with what's come out of risk framing? If it isn't, then you have to have a risk response. You need to enhance your security so that your actual risk aligns with the risk that you're willing to live with. And then finally, there's a need for ongoing risk monitoring, and that's constantly checking for new threats and vulnerabilities and consequences, and then to repeat the process so that your risk level is compatible with what you're willing to live with. So there are a number of ways to deal with risk. We could accept our risk as this is the cost of doing business and we can live with this. We could transfer risk by using a vehicle such as insurance. We will pay a premium to the insurance company, and then if there is a cyber event or a security event, any of the cost of that will be borne by the security company. We could also take active steps to enhance security to reduce risk, or we can avoid risk entirely. We can say that this particular product that we're manufacturing is just too risky. We're not going to manufacture it anymore. Therefore, we immediately get away with the risk associated with that particular product. So those are the four different ways that we can deal with security risk. And risk becomes a process then that's determined where decisions are made based on costs and benefits. We need to understand the costs it takes to purchase and operate security equipment, but also on the cost side of the ledger, we need to consider the potential costs associated with the loss of human health and safety, the loss of intellectual property, business income, public perception risks, and other costs we may encounter. And companies need to find the right balance between security costs and security benefits so they can prevent future losses. So there are a number of steps for instituting an effective security program, including examining organization-wide practices, identifying assets, conducting tabletop reviews, walkthrough inspections and testing, assessing potential threats, attack vectors, and vulnerabilities, performing risk assessments, and on, as I indicated earlier. Then evaluate new security controls and make risk-based decisions on your security enhancements, all part of an ongoing program. And as my colleague mentioned earlier, the National Institute of Standards and Technology provides a wealth of free, publicly accessible documents that provide guidance on putting together an effective security program and also adopting security controls. And their framework focuses on identifying potential problems, protecting yourself from those issues, detecting ongoing or current security activities, intrusions that may be occurring, responding in a timely and effective manner, and then recovering operations after a cyber attack. And now we're near the very end. There are a couple of very interesting NIST documents that are part of an important suite of NIST documents that give an actual detailed list of suites of security controls that can be put into place for IT systems and also for operational technology systems. These documents are quite lengthy, several hundred pages each, epic tomes, but give a very thorough review of the various security controls that are out there that could potentially be selected to enhance both IT and OT security. Cybersecurity program elements, very important to assign roles and responsibilities for cybersecurity, to have an appropriate team to address security problems, to know your assets, to develop an effective plan, to install a cybersecurity culture within your organization where your staff are trained and aware of security issues, to assess threats and consequences and risks, to install security controls, identify security controls, and install ones that are indicated by your risk management program. And with that, I can very quickly segue into what Dr. Gurusetti is going to talk about. He's going to start off by talking about some of our maturity models that can be used by organizations, by universities, by chemical companies, by facilities to assess their current cybersecurity and chemical security status. And my final slide is a little cartoon that I enjoyed quite a bit. What will the warrior guardian of the future look like? Well, it may not be the big guy with the gun. And in fact, it may not just be the little guy with the baseball cap behind him. And in actuality, it's probably both of them needing to work together to safeguard chemical security by addressing the physical, the cyber, and the cyber physical threats that face our sector. And with that, I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Clifford Glantz, for taking us to the journey of cybersecurity in the chemical field. So it was completely an overview of different kinds of attacks, ranging from ransomware attacks, nitro attacks, sabotage of firms operations, IT and OT. And also you spoke about the CIA triad, loss of confidentiality, loss of availability, loss of integrity. And you also spoke about all the hacking tools and techniques, what our adversaries would be having, different kinds of attacks, what actually we come across. You spoke about all the myths, what is there, okay, to where actually we'll be insecure in securing our landscapes of the chemical industries, all those things. So you also spoke about the risk-based decisions. It was really informative, and I think that 1 hour is actually not enough, okay, to the complete overall picture. Okay, so the different kinds of attacks, as we were telling, was about the honeypots. Okay, even the people who are there inside, okay, may be vulnerable because of some other mistakes and the trap which would have been laid over. You also spoke about the hardware attacks. And when you look at the vulnerability assessment, the key points where actually will be more vulnerable will be when there are new updates, new versions coming up. Okay, so the employees will not be capable enough or knowing what are the new versions which is happening, all those things and all. Or whenever new employees join, okay, so while giving access controls, there may be vulnerability for others to attack the systems. And also the what are the whenever we are terminating the employees, okay, whether all the accesses are taken back properly or not, those risks also has to be taken over. And also huge vulnerability will be when bigger companies are taking over small companies. Okay, there will be a lot of policy issues, changes, all those things and all, where the hackers will be trying to look into and exploit these things and all. So there are a lot of things which actually will give an overall idea. Okay, so thanks a lot, sir. It was very informative, and we would
Thank you.
like to see that in future also we'll be having much more sessions with you. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, now over to Vikram Baswa for taking up the next speaker on our session. And give a
Thank you, Brahman, Dr. Brahman. There is one quick question for you, Mr. Glens.
Yes.
So the question is from Dr. Sula. So it says, email hacking and social media account hacking are common nowadays. How can we prevent these, and what are the precautionary steps that need to be taken?
It's a very difficult problem. The first thing that I would strongly advise is the importance of keeping email and other non-essential software off of operating systems, operational technology systems. It's quite often that I'll go into a control room of a facility and you can see email or other non-essential software operating on the control network. And that is an immediate problem that can be quickly resolved. You know, an important thing when dealing with email is to have appropriate filters that the organization can put in place to remove things that are obviously attacks or potentially malicious. But it's very important for people to think before they click, to look at a message, look where it's coming from, and say, am I expecting something from this particular individual? And if I'm not, if it looks just a little bit strange, to put it aside and not open it, or certainly not click on attachments. So there is no foolproof way to stop all phishing attacks and all email exploits, but we can make it more difficult for the adversaries by taking a little bit more time, a little bit more caution, and being aware, and just taking time before we open something which could potentially introduce malware into our organization.
Right, I totally agree with you on that. As a matter of fact, I've seen quite a few emails in the recent past where, which are so well fabricated that it's hard for you to differentiate which one is real and which one is not. They are that well fabricated. The emails are, yeah.
And I can tell you, no matter how good the cybersecurity expert, we can also be had, we can be filled, because there's so much information out there about us. People know what I'm interested in. And they could say, you know, Cliff, I've met with you at this particular meeting and we had a great discussion and I loved your paper on this topic. And here's a paper that's just come out from the UK, which is just on that same exact topic. And if it's well enough crafted, I can easily be fooled and click on that. So I could say be careful, but I could also say that none of us is perfect and all of us can be fooled by an appropriately crafted spear phishing attack.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Glens, for the amazing session, the fabulous session of yours, presentation and everything. Yep.
And Vikram sir, from my side, I am having one question.
Please.
Thank you, Professor Clifford Clank, for your enlightening lecture on cybersecurity. And within the box, you people are doing many things in order to protect the respective softwares, other credentials of the organizations. But out of the box, what kind of motivational classes or rules you are framing in order to motivate the hackers who are learning the courses and all? How you are imposing that?
So I'm sorry, I had a little difficulty hearing you. What I think that just the microphone was a little blurry, but one of the things I think I'll say is there's a lot of wonderful online training that is out there right now that could help the non-cybersecurity specialist come up to speed on some of the issues that are out there. I've done a lot of work with the International Atomic Energy Agency, and they have a wonderful set of cybersecurity e-learning courses, and other organizations as well are putting those out there. So there is an opportunity, provided organizations are encouraging staff to learn, and they're also providing people with the time and the permission to go and take additional training that would help safeguard the organization. Personally, I think that's time well spent for an organization to enhance the training of its staff. I hope I answered the question, but it's only a guess that that was the actual question you were answering. I'm so sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glantz. Does anyone have any questions? If no one has any questions, then off to Dr. Ratnamala.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Clifford Glantz, for enlightening presentation and sparing your valuable time. As Dr. Brahmananda rightly said, 1 hour is just not sufficient. But of course, for today's session, that should be. Now I request Dr. Venkatratnam to release the appreciation certificate to Professor Clifford Glantz.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So over to Dr. Brahmananda.
So after one of the very good session, now we're very eagerly waiting to have Nikhil Gupta Gauri Shetty for the next session. So over to Dr. Vikram Baswa to give a brief profile about our next speaker. Thank you.
Dr. Ratnam, please.
Thank you, convener Ratnamala madam and Brahmananda sir, the session chair. Welcome to the EDIAS and welcome to the Dr. Sri Nikhil Gupta Gauri Shetty. In gist of information, it's a privilege to introduce Sri Nikhil Gupta Gauri Shetty. He's a team leader, research engineer, ICS cybersecurity, blockchain for energy, IoT, and power energy. Dr. Nikhil awarded with doctoral philosophy from University of Arkansas at Little Rock in the field of engineering sciences and systems, essentially grid cybersecurity and blockchain applications. Dr. Sri Nikhil Gupta Gauri Shetty is the energy systems cybersecurity researcher at Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, PNNL, with specialized knowledge and interest in industrial control systems, ICS, cybersecurity, blockchain technology, software engineering, power systems, modeling and simulation, and growing capability in physics-driven machine learning systems. At PNNL, Dr. Nikhil works on several smart grid-connected buildings, cyber physical security projects addressing the resiliency, reliability, and interoperability challenges and the needs of critical infrastructure facilities. Dr. Nikhil is the principal investigator for DOE cybersecurity projects such as blockchain-based cybersecurity system for critical infrastructure and transactive energy, mitigation of external exposure for energy delivery systems, non-intrusive cybersecurity tools to enumerate vulnerabilities and threats. Dr. Nikhil honored with awards of Outstanding Graduating Senior Who is Who in America, Outstanding Undergraduate Student, Outstanding Graduate Student, Outstanding Performance. So The session is handed over to Dr. Nikhil. Welcome, sir. Please.
Thanks for the introduction and good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to see so many audience in this session. I will go ahead and share my screen. First of all, I just want to make sure that can you all hear me just fine? Okay, great.
Fine, absolutely.
All right. I always have difficulties with Zoom. Let me try this again.
Yeah, it
okay.
is shared. You can proceed, Dr. Nikhil.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, Cliff gave an amazing presentation on different types of cybersecurity attacks that are happening in the IT as well as the OT space. And especially we have seen an increase in the attacks in the OT or IoT or Internet of Things space because control systems in general, they were historically not expected to connect to the internet. But since they are connected to the internet these days because of the smart connected systems, we have seen and we are still continuing to see an increase in the cyber attacks that are targeted to the OT systems. Now, Cliff gave a very nice overview of all the bad and the ugly and the worst things that can happen. Now, let me talk a little bit on what can we do. We are the good guys, right? And our goal as good guys is to defend ourselves or defend our facilities against the bad guys. That includes malicious employees or external actors, someone sitting in their parents' basement trying to hack into the systems, you name it, anyone who's trying to do harm to the organization. To address these challenges, in the last few years, we have been focusing on developing different types of tools and processes that are related to helping defenders, such as facility owners, for example, a chemical facility owner, to defend against these bad actors. So in today's call or in today's presentation, I'm going to talk about different types of maturity models. I'll start with an overview of what a maturity model is and how to use them. Then I will talk about a tool that may be of interest to most of you, which is the chemical security assessment model tool, which is something that is developed based on the maturity model architecture. I come from cybersecurity and operational technology background. And a beauty about working at a national lab is we get to work with folks from other expertise, such as Radhakishan, who is a chemist, Cliff, who works in nuclear and other areas. So in development of CSAM, or the chemical security assessment model, we worked with experienced chemists or chemical researchers, chemical engineers in developing this defense mechanism tool. And finally, I'm going to talk about facilities cybersecurity framework. And the reason why we have this particular item in this presentation is because of the different types of attacks that Cliff highlighted in his presentation that are targeting industrial control systems or OT systems. Let's start with a general overview of a maturity model. Why do we even need maturity models? Well, at a very high level, for the very obvious reasons that how do we not only understand the threats that are and the threat actors that are trying to disrupt our facilities or disrupt our operations, but how do we understand the overall cybersecurity or security posture of our organization? Now, when I say security posture, I'm talking about if I question myself as a defender that is my organization capable to defend against all those threat actors and attacks that Cliff talked about? Am I capable to do that? Now, understanding that, answering that question itself, it's a one sentence question, but there is so much behind it. There are so many aspects that intertwine together to answer that particular question. And that's exactly what I'm going to speak in the next 20 to 30 minutes is how does something like a maturity model can help facilities to understand their overall cybersecurity posture and identify what kind of gaps they may have so they can enhance some of their overall protection systems and safeguard against cyber attacks. But before I talk about the core details of this fancy chemical security assessment model and other things, let's talk about the phrase maturity model. Since we were kids, most of us, if not all of us, lived through maturity models. Legos. I don't know how many of you remember Legos playing as a kid. In fact, I still play with puzzles and I love Legos even as an adult. And 20 years from now, you knock my door and ask me, do you like Legos? I'll say yes to that. So Legos is a very good example because we start with something very simple as a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old. Then we can go all the way to extremely complex. What does it show? It shows the amount of maturity or the complexity that is associated with these Lego systems. Maturity models work in a very similar fashion. We cannot solve all the problems in one day, but we can progressively solve our problems if we strategize our resources and time to reach a particular target state where my organization would be capable enough to defend against cyber or physical or any sorts of attacks in a very effective manner. And if I take that Lego example and make it a little more, I guess, scientific or mathematical, that might resonate with a lot of the audience in this presentation. Let's talk about counting. We start several years ago, we used our fingers to count, right? Then we started with paper and pen, then we had abacus and slide rule, and now we have computers that can do extremely complex calculations, such as finding the largest prime number, or that is never ending, that will keep going on, right? So when it comes to humans, we start with crawling as babies, then we walk, then we can run and fly, of course, using mechanical systems or electromechanical systems. And then if we take that example and put it in the context of security, this is a good example in terms of authentication. So we all use emails. I'm assuming most of us use emails, and we start with passwords. And several years ago, when Yahoo or Gmail started, we all had easy passwords. In several years ago, I'm sure some of us even had our username and our password as same. But over the course of years, when we saw this interconnection of various systems, organizations like NIST and other agencies started putting out rules in terms of how to have strong passwords. But years later, we saw attackers getting more sophisticated using password cracking and password sniffing attacks. And there are some attacks that Cliff talked, such as rainbow and birthday attacks. Some of that might be in the cryptography space, but in general, what I'm trying to get to is password cracking itself became very easy, even though you have alphanumeric characters and whatnot. So that's where we transitioned into two-factor authentication. Well, now I need to have a password and my ID card that I can tag to the door. Now then it went to 3-factor. Can I use biometrics and an ID card and a password? Now, researchers, in fact, a lot of the institutions have been exploring multi-factor authentication. You would have all of these, then you would need to synchronize with the GPS signal, right? So in terms of the maturity model, it kind of goes in the similar way. If you have various security controls, various security processes, you would start with, are you even doing anything, right? Even if not, if you don't have a policy, if you don't have a well-defined process, do you have someone who can fix this if something bad happens? So we look at, are you doing something in an ad hoc manner? Then we start looking at, well, are you managing this? Do you have a point of contact? Did you define your policies, right? And are you quantitatively measuring it and managing it, looking at return on investment? If I don't want to invest $100,000 to secure a $10 system, it doesn't make sense. So we want to be careful in terms of what we can protect and to what level of safeguards we should have in our facility to protect the systems. And this is another example or another way to look at the maturity models in general, to look at, are we practicing this? Do we have anything again, right? And there are different types of maturity models that are used. In fact, I read a paper on a religious maturity model. There was a paper from, I believe from Malaysia or somewhere, they were talking about using a maturity model to evaluate the level of religious followers are in the particular community, informal followers all the way to extremely strict orthodox or religious followers, right? So maturity models are everywhere, not just in the security. Now with that short overview, let's jump into the chemical security assessment modeling tool. And this is something we developed about, I would say, 3 years ago. And this chemical security assessment modeling tool is something we developed using Department of Energy's cybersecurity capability maturity model. And C2M2, it is called. It has been around for a long time, I believe, maybe close to a couple of decades. Cliff, myself, and a whole bunch of PNL researchers work in that space of using C2M2 or that maturity model for different domains, for electricity, for buildings, for any kind of critical infrastructure such as oil and gas. In fact, we developed something for insider threats that Cliff introduced about how you may have a malicious employee. We developed a model that can be used to evaluate, is the organization prepared for any kind of insider threats? But I'm not going to talk about the details of that particular model, but today I'm going to focus mostly on the CSAM or chemical security assessment model. This model itself is categorized into 10 different domains. Now, if you remember, like about 10 minutes ago, the goal is to understand, is my organization prepared enough to defend against whatever the cyber attack? What is my maturity? What is my security maturity? To answer that simple question, these are all the domains that we have to go through. We start with risk management, and I'm going to talk about these domains in detail in the next few slides. Then we go to asset and lifecycle management, and then we'll talk about identity and access management. And how do we manage the threats and vulnerabilities that we know or we are aware of that might impact our facility? And how about situational awareness? Do we know what is going on around us? Do we know what is going on in our entire sector or domain outside our facility? How about information sharing? We live in a connected world. So what is the right way or right channels or secure channels to share information so we all can help each other? Or in fact, even inside your organization, what is the right channel of sharing the information among different departments? And well, what if there is an event or an attack? How do you respond to that? And how do you make sure you have continuous operations? Because operations are key. If you lose operations, that could impact your overall business processes. In some cases, such as hospitals, that could even cause loss of life. So is my organization prepared enough to make sure my operations are not impacted from these adverse attacks? How about supply chain and external dependencies? In fact, Cliff had a good slide on supply chain attacks. Well, am I ready for that, right? Workforce management. We are all people. Yes, we can think about the world like Terminator, where we have machines ruling everything, but we are not there yet, right? We are still, it's humans who is taking care of everything and all the systems. So do we have the people of it? Because if you remember, there were 3 pieces: people, processes, and technology. Do we have the people, and are they trained enough to maintain the security? Finally, how about the program itself? Everything that we talked about, these 9 domains until now, falls under this 10th domain that the facilities or organizations need to have support from the management. As they say, the best way to follow security, you start from the top. all the way from the C-suite. It flows down to the employees. It's very similar to a parent or a family model, right? Parents have to set a good example to their kids and so on and so forth. So, well, do we have that secure programs in our facilities? Now, these maturity models, especially the CSAM, it has, I believe, 300 different questions. And all of these questions, they're not very simple survey questions. All of them requires a certain level of expertise, or expects certain level of expertise from the individuals that are answering these questions. So what we recommend using the best way to use this model, or when we go out to do security assessments, we don't sit with one person. We sit with a whole bunch of people. We sit with someone from their IT department. We say, we would have someone from their OT department, someone who is on the field, from operations. In fact, in some cases, we have an HR and a legal person, because it's important, right? If there is an attack, well, what is the legal way to respond so your stakeholders are not impacted? So it's a mix of people that need to work together to go through this assessment to see that if their facility is prepared for adverse events. Now, I know I'm going a little bit slow. I'm going to speed up a little bit. So these questions in general, they are assigned a particular grade. It's called the maturity indicator level. So we talked about the progressiveness, right? You start from crawling, then you walk, then you run, then you fly. So that's what the maturity indicator levels work. You have some basic processes that you're doing in an informal fashion. Well, that's MIL 1. If you're doing absolutely nothing, that's an MIL 0, or a maturity indicator level 0. Now, if you have certain policies, if you have at least some level of stakeholders involved, and if you're documenting what you're doing, and that practice would be categorized as an MIL 2 or a maturity indicator level 2. Finally, now, if you have a responsible point of contact, who is to blame if something goes wrong, or who is to call if something goes wrong to fix. Now that is better managed. You have a well-defined policy, you have a point of contact, you document everything, you know what to do and how to address the situation. Now that is categorized under MIL 3. So the CSAM has a lot of built-in data analytics. Based on the time, I'll do a small demonstration to show how CSAM works. That kind of not only helps you to understand all the good that you're doing, it is also very good in terms of telling you all the bads, meaning, the bad and the ugly, right? It's always good to get compliments, but it's also very important to get constructive feedback so I can fix my facility, right? That's exactly what CSAM is aiming towards. And we have to remember, security is never-ending process. As long as there are bad guys, they're always brewing something. They're always trying to do something bad. So as defenders, as the good guys, we always should be prepared on our toes to respond to adverse events. And that's exactly what these security models try to prepare you towards that. These models do not tell you, these models do not prescribe any kind of a tool or a software or a hardware to use. It points you to the right direction so you can head in that direction and pick something that works for your facility. So it's not a prescriptive model. It's more of, it's something that sets direction or helps you with setting a direction for your security programs. All right. In the next few minutes, let's talk a little bit about different domains that we have in the CSAM. So starting from the risk management, this is the absolute first step. I need to understand my risks and what kind of risks am I dealing with? What kind of threat actors am I dealing with before I even decide to do anything, right? And when I'm talking about risk management, it's about, you want to develop your strategy. You want to understand what kind of resources you have. You want to understand how would your operations be impacted by a particular type of events, and what other organizations would be impacted by this. Or are you depending on some other organizations? So in this case, how would you manage your overall chemical security risk? And the first step of the risk management is doing risk assessment. So when we talk about cybersecurity, some of you might have heard cybersecurity itself, it is risk management. It is managing my risk. So you would want to assess your risk so you can better understand your overall risks, so you can better manage that. Well, once you understand at a high level, once you have certain risk management strategy, how would you respond to certain kind of risks? You want to think about how do you manage your assets? Do you even know what you have in your facility? In a lot of the cases, this is actually the first step or the first question we ask facilities, that do you know what you have? Let's forget about amazing, fancy, smart devices that can detect and mitigate the attacks from hundreds of miles away. But do you even know what you have? That's what this particular domain deals with. It has a whole set of questions that helps you understand what kind of assets do you have? What kind of chemical inventory do you have? How are you storing them? How are you receiving them? Throughout the life cycle of a chemical asset, how are you managing them, right? In configuration, perhaps is a wrong word in the chemical asset management world, but configuration is something that is largely used in the cyber world. But this is targeting towards how do you ensure that you have full visibility throughout the life cycle of an asset. And what is an asset? Simple, anything that holds value, anything that is valuable to your organization. That includes a chemical, that includes data related to that chemical systems, that includes information or confidential information related to your own facility or whatever you're manufacturing. In some cases, it even includes a level of processes that slightly deals with people. Now, when we talk about managing or inventorying our assets, we're looking at how do we track them, right? What are the specifications of my asset? I need to have full visibility. How critical is this asset? If I have two systems or two chemicals, which is more important? Do I put more resources to protect chemical A or chemical B? How do I determine that? So you need to understand the first step in terms of maintaining or ensuring that your critical systems are secured with the right amount of protection systems. You need to understand what kind of systems you have. And the next one is identity and access management. Again, we are all people. And how do we make sure all the individuals that are in our facility, we can track them in a way that John Smith can access XYZ or Lisa can access XYZ. How do we know that? Do we know what our people are doing and what kind of systems they have access? Do we have systems in place that it can flag if someone is trying to access something that they do not have permission to access? So do we have such kind of detection systems in place? How about threat and vulnerability mitigation? Well, that is the whole core aspect, right? Which are two critical components of risk: threat and vulnerability. Then we talk about impact, right? So do I know all my threats? If not, how do I categorize my threats? How do I go with understanding what kind of threats am I dealing with? Based on the assets that I have in my facility, based on my risk assessment, do I know what kind of security vulnerabilities do I have in my facility? And what is a vulnerability? It's nothing but a weakness. How do attackers do bad things? Well, they are very patient. They try to find the weakness in your system or weakness in your facility. They wait for the right time. I don't know how many of you watched the amazing Netflix or BBC series called Earth, in that they show how predators in wild, they hunt, they have patience, they wait for their prey when the prey is alone and they kill it. Now, attackers are very patient people, but we as defenders, we have a lot of other things we are dealing with, right? So if we understand our threats and vulnerabilities very well, so that would be a very good first step for us to better manage our assets. Maybe we can fix these vulnerabilities. Maybe we can go to our management to invest into this. Maybe we can invest in some sort of monitoring tools. If you don't have the personnel with right skill set, perhaps we can train them. Maybe we can hire an auditor to do an unbiased auditing of our facility to tell us what kind of things we are doing bad, right? What areas can we improve? So all of this can fall under the threat and vulnerability management and mitigation umbrella. How about situational awareness? There was a slide or a point that Cliff made was on, well, you have this fancy firewall, this huge castle. If you don't have anyone monitoring it, or if you don't have anyone that is looking at the logs, there's no point in having very expensive detections or protection systems or safeguarding or firewalls. You want someone monitoring this or something that is monitoring this. Someone or something that can flag if there is an anomaly, if it is detecting something that is deviating from the baseline processes. And do you have a common operating picture, which basically means in an ideal situation, this is my baseline. This is how my systems are supposed to work. This is where my chemicals are supposed to reside. This is how my connected systems are supposed to respond if someone is tampering with, let's say, a secure location that you have your hazardous chemicals. Now, do you have all your systems in check? Or are you maintaining them? Are you testing them? Now, information sharing. This is important because we are living in a very different world as compared to 30 or 40 years ago. We are dealing with growing threats day by day. How do we make sure that we can help each other inside the organization and even with our stakeholders? How do we work with our vendors and with our peers? How do we work with government agencies? Who do we reach out to if there is an event? That's all falls under information sharing. And how would event and incident response? Well, you must have noticed there are two terms here. One is an event and the other one is an incident. If you notice a deviation from your baseline operations, that is something we can flag as an event. But now that event is causing some adverse effects on your overall business process or your facility, now all of a sudden that becomes an incident that is disrupting your facility. So how do you manage your events and incidents? When do you escalate them? You don't want false positives. Well, you would have false positives, but you do not want a lot of false positives because then your detection system would be of no advantage to you. So how do you manage that? And if there is an event, if there is an incident, how do you continue your operations? Because maybe there are certain chemicals that have to be at certain temperatures. Otherwise, that could cause adverse events. In that case, how do you make sure that they can maintain that level of, you can maintain that level of temperature and humidity in those locations? Do you have backup systems? Do you have redundant communication systems? And finally, supply chain. Supply chain is a big problem. In fact, with COVID-19, we have been seeing supply chain issues all over the world, whether it is related to treatment drugs, whether it is related to masks, which is something that hit the whole world a lot. Supply chain has been a significant issue in a lot of organizations and places. So how do we go with the supply chain or maintaining the supply chain security of our entire ecosystem? Do we know who our suppliers are? There are tier A suppliers, tier 2 suppliers, and so on. In a lot of the cases, we are finding that a lot of organizations, they don't even know who their tier 1 suppliers are in detail, right? Do you have backups? Do you have redundancies there? How do you manage your risks that are coming from your supplier or from your supply chain that you have very less control on, right? And workforce management. It deals with making sure that you have the right level of expertise at your facility that understands you may, like I said, there people is the core of it, right? And if you're talking about chemical facility, you may want someone who understands security. You may want someone who understands physical and cyber security. You may want someone who understands chemicals and perhaps other aspects of making sure that your facility is secure. And finally, the core aspect of it is to have a program that makes all of this happen. We talked about a lot of pieces here, all the way from risk assessment to workforce management. All of that comes under an umbrella of the senior management caring about, yes, I want to secure the facility. I do care about this. And I know it's not a myth. Attacks are real. Cyber physical attacks are real. So we have to invest in securing today so we can have a better tomorrow. So do we have programs that can make sure these security programs can happen? Now, how do we use this maturity model? Again, I'm going to show it in a minute. I have a website open up on the side. It's a continuous process. These maturity models are designed, including CSAM, it is designed to be used in a very continuous process. You start with performing an evaluation. You use the CSAM, you perform an assessment. It tells you all the good things in your facility. It also tells you all the gaps that you may have. Once you have your gaps, you may not care about all of them, right? Not all the gaps are relevant to your facility. In that case, you want to figure out what gaps actually make sense for you to mitigate, or what makes sense for you to invest your resources to mitigate the gaps. Then you develop your plan. So let's say, all right, we have $200,000 and we have 20 gaps that are very impactful for our facility, and we have to mitigate them. And you develop the plan and how you're going to do that. You're going to hire few people. You're going to buy more systems and install. You're going to have redundancy in your networks, and etc. Then you implement those plans. Let's say over the course of 6 months, you have a target that within 6 months, I'm going to mitigate my 20 gaps. Then you come back in 6 months. Then you perform another assessment, and you keep doing this, right? Because our facilities always evolve. We always are buying new systems, new equipment. We are losing people. We are gaining new people. So it's a never-ending process. It is built to make it easy to use it as a continuous process. Now, I spoke a lot of things and at a very high level, and the CSAM itself has a lot of data. It deals with over 300 different questions at different levels, at different, of course, maturities. Now, how do we analyze all of that data? It's too much information, right? Cliff talked about a whole bunch of all the bad things that's happening, and I just talked about a whole bunch of things that you can use to address these. That's where we have built-in analytics into the CSAM that will help you put things in a perspective. All right, you just worked with your teams and you answered this set of questions over, let's say, 3 days or 4 days or 5 days. And then it tells you that, hey, how would you focus on these 5 things? Maybe you can start with this. It doesn't prescribe. It's not prescriptive. It has a lot of suggestions in there. It shows you the low-hanging fruit for you to think about, right? Ultimately, it's you who is making the decision to fix whatever that is most impactful to your facility, because every facility is a snowflake. We don't have one common theme of facilities, right? That's very important. So let me kind of jump aside here. Let me show CSAM just a little bit. I hope you guys can still see my screen, the website. Cliff, show me a thumbs up if you can. Okay, cool. So this is the website. I'm not sure if it is accessible outside PNNL, but if this is of interest, perhaps Cliff and I can reach out to you guys, or you can reach out to us. So these are all the domains we talked about, right? Risk management, asset management, identity management, and so on and so forth. And each of these guys, they have a whole bunch of questions here. And these are not very simple survey questions. Someone has to be an expert. Someone has to really know what they're dealing with to actually truly answer this. In several cases, in fact, I personally conducted several security assessments, and it is very common when I see someone, a domain expert, saying that, oh yeah, we do that, but other person from a similar or sister domain says, no, we don't do that. He's wrong, right? So there's a lot of discrepancies in what people think they actually do. So these maturity models puts everyone on the same table, so they can actually collectively move forward as a team, as an organization. So I'm not going to go through these questions because that is going to take 7 days or something like that. Our average assessment times go from 3 to 5 days. So it takes a long time. But I'm going to cheat here, and I'm going to generate a small example report to show what it does. So this maturity model, our maturity model, it is designed to generate not only the gaps that are in your facility, it is also designed to show or establish a common communication platform with your stakeholders, whether it is internal or external stakeholders. If I'm using a word called vulnerability, and if someone else is using something else, and if someone else is using a synonym of that, now we are talking about the same thing in different vernacular, and it is going to be all confusing. So this can also be used to set up a common communication platform with your stakeholders, so you all know how to manage your risks. And for example, this shows you what kind of low-hanging fruit or vulnerabilities that you have, and it tells you all the good things that you're doing. that, hey, you're doing this great, right? Keep doing this. And we have a lot of built-in tools into this that tells you that, if I'm using this tool for 10 years, and if I'm putting a lot of resources into this to fix the gaps, how do I know if I got better? So we have a lot of built-in capabilities that will automatically tell you how you progressed over time. It tells information such as over the course of 10 years, your overall cybersecurity posture improved from 60% security to 95% security, right? It gives you certain statistics to acceptable level, and it tells you what kind of gaps you have mitigated to show you what kind of return on investment that you have, right? So I'm going to get back into the presentation, and I think I may have few minutes. I might be able to finish up my slides here. All right. We talked about CSAM, which is primarily and only actually designed for chemical facilities. But we have a large number of tools that deals with a large number of things, such as OT cybersecurity, smart grid systems, oil and gas, supply chain management, insider threat, you name it. We have a whole bunch of tools. So how do we go with developing these tools? Do we just open, do we just wake up one day and just put together a bunch of questions? Not really, right? So we use existing standards. So PNNL as a national lab, we pride in working with other researchers, other institutions, government and private and national labs, so we can put out something that can be used by the entire community. So we go off using National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, which is very trusted and very well known in the US to start with. So then we use Department of Energy C2M2 model and a bunch of other programs. These are some examples on different types of models that we use in a lot of our tools. But to give you a general overview of, we take these different guidelines, policy documents, standards, and all of this, if we combine, there are over 1,000 to 2,000 pages. And we all have day jobs, like as defenders, we're trying to make our operations work. On top of that, do I have to remember all the 1,000 pages? Well, that's where we are developing these tools, so that you don't have to worry about remembering every word of the 1,000 pages. These tools can help you to scope what your mitigations should be. So, so this is something called a facility cybersecurity framework. And this is primarily designed for any kind of critical infrastructure that is dealing with operational technology cybersecurity, or OT cybersecurity. Cliff talked about difference between information technology and operations technology. In the world of information technology, there is a lot. There is a lot of best practices. There are a lot of standardizations that already happened. IT has been there for a long time. We've been using email servers for, I don't know, since I was a baby, I guess. So IT has been there for a long time. But if you look at OT, it's new. Oh, well, let me take that word back. OT has also been there for a long time. But historically, they were not designed to connect to the internet. They were designed to be this isolated child that sits in the corner of the house. They're not supposed to talk to anyone. They were supposed to just be by themselves. But now we have these smart connected systems that is amazing, because it is giving us the capability to remotely monitor these systems. We don't have to dispatch an operator to fix it. We can just do it on the fly from our room. That also poses a lot of risks, because now we have legacy systems in there. The system that is there for 20 years. Cliff talked about confidentiality. When we talk about confidentiality, we deal with encryption. Can we make sure that we maintain the secrecy of the data when it is flowing between two different systems? But if one of the systems does not even understand encryption because it is 40-year-old, that's not going to work, right? That is actually going to do bad things to your network. So you are yourself inadvertently doing bad to your network. So operations technology is a whole different beast that we are dealing with. So we developed with a whole bunch of facility cybersecurity framework tools that will let you define, or let any stakeholder define what kind of processes they have in place, so they can understand what their cybersecurity posture is. And this will also help the facilities to set a target state. How do they want to reach the target state? And where do they want to reach, right? And I'm going to rely on Cliff that if I'm kind of going over time, I kind of lost track of time, but you can show me the fingers, Cliff. That's okay. And how do we assess progress towards our target state, right? Well, I know what I'm doing. I know what are my bad things. I know I want to reach this peak. I want to hike through that. How do I do that? It'll help you guide. It'll guide you towards that. It will not tell you to do X, Y, Z. It doesn't give you thou shall language, but it will guide you towards a particular process. And of course, establishing a common communication platform with your stakeholders. So we developed the facility cybersecurity framework that is so completely different from the C2M2. CSAM uses C2M2, whereas the facility cybersecurity framework uses the NIST cybersecurity framework. At least in the US, NIST cybersecurity framework is one of the hottest frameworks on the street, and everyone is trying to use it. And because it is really good, it's a high level. It has a lot of flexibility, so you can fix and fit it to your particular facilities. It has 5 different domains, but in general, it has a lot of similarities with C2M2 or cybersecurity capability maturity model architecture as well. The goal is, as the risks evolve, how do you evolve as well to defend against them, right? How do you mitigate those risks? How do you determine if you have to mitigate those risks, or maybe you have to accept those risks because the money you have to invest is not worth mitigating it, right? Maybe can you transfer these risks using insurance companies or whatnot? So there are a lot of decisions that you can make when you discover a risk. It talks about going with identifying different types of assets, data, and what kind of systems that you have, having a clear understanding between what falls under IT and what falls under OT. And it goes with protection. Well, now that you know what you have, how do you protect them? Where do you start from? Where do you start from in terms of protecting the systems? If protection fails, do you have something to detect them, detect the events, or detect any kind of anomalies or intrusions? Well, if the attacker is smart enough and the detection fails and executes something, can you respond to those before something bad happens? Do you have the tools and resources in your hand to respond to this effectively? How do you respond to this kind of events? What is the most effective way to respond to these events? Well, you failed to respond. Can you recover? We talked about continuity of processes. We talked about business continuity. How do you recover effectively? So that you don't lose the fame of your organization, you don't lose any kind of life or equipment or any kind of process that could impact your overall organization. Do you have some processes in place so you can recover from the attack into a safe state? This tool family itself has a lot of components in there. It does the core assessment, which is very similar to the questionnaire that I showed you in CSAM, but it's a whole different beast here in terms of the type of questions it asks. It talks about your network systems. It talks about your OT infrastructure that you have. And then we have a tool that will let you perform a risk management or kind of uses risk management framework, which is also another framework from NIST, or National Institute of Standards and Technology, that will help you to better understand your core aspects of your OT infrastructure and OT networks. It has a qualitative risk assessment. We talked about maintaining your assets, understanding what you have. Understanding the assets is important. At the same time, understanding what kind of vulnerability they may have. If I lose that asset, what kind of impact will I have, right? Can I use these 2 factors to assign some sort of a risk level to the asset? Is it a low risk asset? Is it a high risk asset? So the qualitative risk assessment lets you to manage your assets in a very risk informed fashion. And I think a few minutes ago, I mentioned how these tools can automatically help you to show how you've progressed over time, right? Have you gotten better? Have you gotten worse? Are your resources going to the right place, right? Are you getting a good return on investment on this? And we talked about this. I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time here, but basically what this slide is going at is it tells you what kind of gaps that you have, so you can identify the low-hanging fruit and you can go towards mitigating these low-hanging fruit. Again, baby steps, right? Security doesn't happen overnight. Your facility doesn't go from level 0 to level 3 overnight. It takes time. You just have to go through the right process. And very similar to the CSAM, facility cybersecurity framework is designed to generate a lot of interesting data analytics for you that you can actually use to better understand what kind of mitigations that you have to take in place or have in place. And these are a couple of examples that I have. I'm realizing that I have way too many slides for the time. So Primer is another tool that is very interesting. We talked about having an assessment, doing an assessment. You develop a plan and you start implementing the plan over the course of 6 months. But how do you track that, right? You don't want to do assessment every day. Each assessment takes a lot of time. You don't have time for that. So can you informally track your progress towards your target state? That's exactly what Primer is designed to do. It helps you kind of keep together some sort of a shopping list to track your progress over the course of time between your assessments, just to make sure that you're doing the right things. And finally, training game. Yes, you heard it right. This is a real game. I'm not a huge fan of PowerPoint presentations, and I'm assuming people get bored with hours long of training and PowerPoint presentations. So we decided to create a game. So these games are developed based on real world cyber attacks. Some of them that Cliff talked about, we used real attacks, we used real forensic information, vulnerabilities that were impacted by real attackers. We don't know who they were in some cases, of course, because the data was not released, but we developed fictitious facilities, fictitious attacks that are used to create a very realistic scenario that has a very interesting mathematical algorithm that does a lot of resource allocation. So that puts you on the spot. We ran an interesting workshop last year, and there was a lot of tension between the team members. Although it's fiction, there was a lot of tension, right? It puts you in a very tough spot when you play through these games. Just gonna skip over these. These are different types of data and data analytics that we get out of the games that tells you how good you have done. In some cases, maybe you failed to stop the attacker. Maybe in some cases you stopped the attacker, but maybe you used too many resources. So your return on investment is bad, right? In some cases, maybe you did it exactly what you're supposed to do. It gives you all sorts of information. So you don't just play, but you also learn from these games. Finally, we talked about different types of cybersecurity maturity models. And we talked about C2M2 and how C2M2 progresses over time and how you can use them. And we all have to remember that cybersecurity, chemical security, as a matter of fact, any level of security is a continuous and evolving process. And we should always remember that. That pretty much concludes my presentation today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nikhil. So it was a journey towards the different models and tools, okay, for securing the cybersecurity, chemical security assessment model, facility cybersecurity framework tool set, all those things and all. So as you say, it is a maturity model. So I think maturity, common sense, and following the framework consistently, that is always are the key factors for securing these systems. The vulnerabilities would be the lethargy of people trying to have shortcuts, and also attitudes of taking for granted that the system is always secured, nobody would attack our systems, all those things and all. And also while auditing, they try to hesitate to audit their higher ups. Those are the keys. And also the persons who has the access controls tries to share those to their assistants or subordinates. So all these factors will again make the system vulnerable. So this mature framework model will really help in securing the complete system frameworks. But we should be, even though there is a lot of care which is being taken down to identify the risks, but the hackers will be very smart enough to wipe out their trials. So detecting that the system has been compromised and responding and recovering back the system, okay, and all the data which has been compromised, okay, are the challenging aspects. So it's always the cat and the mouse game which is going on between the good people and the bad people. So you gave us a very good insight of how actually these tools and all okay helps, and this framework helps in securing the system. Thank you, Nikhil.
Thank you so much.
And
Question and answers.
Question and answers. Hello. Question and answers section. One of the panelists, Janardhan, is asking one question.
Okay, sir. Okay, I will. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Nikhil Sethi, for your enlightening lecture. And my question is, like in our daily life, we are using different apps or applications developed by various countries. So how safe they are in protecting our personal data?
So that is a good question. Do you want me to answer something that you would like, or do you want me to answer something that is true?
Both. You tell both ways.
So, okay, I'll tell you what I do, and I'll tell you what I tell my parents that really like smartphones and they like to click everything on their phones too. First of, in my phone, I use this for two things. I use it for taking the phone calls and texts, and I use it for my email. That is also using multi-factor authentication. That we talked about multi-factor, right? That's all. I don't have any games in this. I don't have any kind of apps in this, just because I don't need to, right? Because there was an interesting experiment that we all can find on Reddit. I think you all know TikTok. It's being really famous, right? So TikTok was actually reverse engineered about a month or 2 months ago. They found a lot of data compromising bugs in there that was exfiltrating your personal information to servers that are in different countries, wherever the app was developed, right? So I personally would not recommend using any sort of apps until they're absolutely needed. Sometimes I go to a conference that they want you to install an app so you can follow the agenda. I do that. Then I immediately delete that, right? Because we have a lot of junk apps in our phone. If you open our phones and see how many apps do we truly use, do we really want 25 games in that phone? What are they doing to us, right? I would recommend using other ways to keep you entertained. Like there are, PlayStations and handheld PlayStations and things like that. Because Cliff talked about a lot of interesting attacks, which makes you click the links and that downloads some malware. And that is exactly valid for the phones as well. Phones are also running a version of operating system or a type of operating system similar to your computers. So if those links can brick your computer, those links can actually brick your phones and steal your information. So I hope you liked it, but that's the truth.
Yeah, I liked it. But is there any specific identity how we can identify this is a safe app? Whatever WhatsApp we are using regularly for various purposes, but is there any specific identity like it is safe or not?
Yeah, so there are some apps that are okay, right? For example, Facebook. I would not say yes or no to that. It's a hard question, right? It's a very hard question because one way is to read the terms and conditions. Because when we open an app and we start installing the app, how many of us just scroll down and click agree to the terms and conditions?
It will take around 3 to 4 hours to read the terms and conditions.
Exactly. So that's one way to do that. And second way is there are resources online, right? That actually that are designed. Some of these resources can actually share information on types of the bugs that they find. For example, there are some security forums, not for the phones. The ones that I know that are related to control systems is one of them is ICS CERT, and SANS is another organization. I'm sure there may be something for the mobile phones and phone apps as well, that there is some security and reverse engineering and forensics related information. You may have to spend some time Googling.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Nikhil, for your
Just a quick question. Your opinion on the Zoom app, which we all have downloaded to be in the thing?
You were cutting off. Can you repeat the question?
Sir, can you repeat?
Sure. What's your opinion? Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. What's your opinion on the Zoom app, which we all have downloaded to be here at the meeting today?
See, again, it's a hard question, right? Because if we are talking about certain apps, the way I personally like to approach towards software security is not assuming that any software is secure, right? Because for example, when I talk with a software engineer or someone to get on my team, when I ask them about security questions, I've had some people in the past that said that my software is absolutely secure and there are no bugs in there. There's no point in bringing that person, right? Because the first step towards understanding the security of my system is willing to accept that I may never be 100% secure, because there is nothing called 100% secure. It is only secure until it is not. That's why in security, we have something called zero-day attacks and zero-day vulnerabilities. So zero-day vulnerabilities are nothing but vulnerabilities or weaknesses that are not discovered yet. And that means, well, exactly, right? So, but when it is discovered, that was the first time that was found in the system, and there is no mitigation for that in place. And same with zero-day attacks, an attack that no one knows about. Like all of us, let's say we don't know anything about it, and tomorrow we saw a whole bunch of systems completely bricked. Now that's a zero-day attack none of us are familiar with. So the system, let's take an example, Zoom or some other software that we are using. As of today, the companies may have done a large amount of vulnerability analysis on that and penetration testing on these tools to make sure that they are secure until today. Tomorrow there could be a zero-day, right? Maybe, so that's why for the softwares that we use, we always get our patch updates, right? Like for example, Microsoft Windows, Microsoft Word, it's been there for so long, and we keep getting patches every month, right? Because despite that software being way older than Zoom, Microsoft is always discovering more bugs, more vulnerabilities. So they release the patch so no one can attack our Microsoft system. Same goes with the Zoom, especially things like Zoom or CSAM and something else. A lot of these actually are they're using some level of web-based technologies in there. So in some cases, these patches are automatically deployed because it doesn't need to be fully installed on your system because it's through web-driven. I hope I answered your question, but if you ask me, I don't think there is something called a fully secure software.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Nikhil, one more thing. How would I identify whether my system is hacked or my mobile is hacked? How would I know?
So there are a few ways there are some simple ways and there are some hard ways. If the attacker is very sophisticated and if they're executing stealthy attacks, it becomes very hard to know. But there are some, for someone to execute stealth attacks, they have to be very very efficient at what they're doing. But in some cases, there are some softwares that you can use. For example, there is something called Wireshark. So Wireshark is a very simple, easy to use software that is freely available. So in fact, I run Wireshark in my home laptop. What you can do is when you run Wireshark in your system, it looks at your entire data traffic. And it gives you a snapshot of what IP addresses are talking to what IP addresses, right? So one of the ways to slow down your internet speed or whatnot that you're getting in your house, right? So there's something called a TCP or a SYN attack, where the attacker tries to send you some sort of a half handshake messages. So before your system can respond, or your system is responding, but the other agent does not respond to your handshake process. So when they send these recurrent processes or recurrent handshake requests, that actually floods your overall, your modem or your network in general. So in some cases, what you do, some people, if that you can restart your modem to start with. But the whole aspect is your router or your modem or your system. If you're using like a good company ones such as Netgear or whatever that Cisco or anything else, they usually release your security patches. So you may want to first go with using security patches always being installed. Second thing, you want to make sure that you're using secure wireless connectivity, right? Because we have WEP, we have WPA and WPA2. So WPA2 is the most secure right now. If you're, but if you look some of the old routers, you can actually choose web and WPA as well. And sometimes some of the routers, they default to that. And you want to start with protection, right? You want to start with using all best practices to protect your systems. Then you can go towards detection, where you can use software such as Wireshark, where you can check your traffic. There are some other tools. For example, some of the routers, such as Netgear, has something called Nighthawk. It is one of their router brand. So they release a phone app for you to install. What this phone app does, it actually notifies you when you have certain types of patches. And it also tells you what kind of IP addresses are connected to your internet access point. So that way you can actually simply go to the app to see, okay, why do I have 6 IP addresses, right? Is there a rogue device in my network? So you can use some of the basic apps that comes with your router as well. So I hope that addresses the question.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Nikhil, and thank you, Professor Clifford. And session is handed over to Dr. A. Ratnamala.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sri Nikhil Gupta Gaurisetti, for wonderful presentation. Now I request Dr. Venkatratnam to release the appreciation certificate to Dr. Sri Nikhil Gupta Gaurisetti.
Thank you so much. Very good questions. I really enjoyed presenting this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This 3-day International E-Symposium went on successfully with good response from the researchers all over. The recordings of the sessions are available in YouTube. If anybody wants any of the session recordings, please mail us. We will be sharing them. The PowerPoint presentations of the speakers will be shared only with permission from the speakers. Okay, the e-certificates will be provided to the registered participants within 10 days. Now, the feedback from participants. Any of the participants would like to give your opinions, please? Dr. Janardhan, if anybody wants to give the feedback of the symposium from participants' side.
Yeah, madam. Yeah, madam. I'm looking at the hands they're raising.
So from Ningaraju, he wants to give the feedback.
So wait a minute. Yeah. Yes. Shubhrat, unmute yourself.
Please.
Yeah, sir, I can hear.
Respond to them.
Yeah, sir, I can hear.
Yeah,
Hello.
Shubhrat, please.
Yeah. Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it is audible.
Yeah. Good morning, sir. Respected sir, madam, and all members. I'm Shiprat, a research scholar from GITAM University, Bangalore campus, working under Dr. H. Manjunath. I'm very happy that I had been participated in the international conference that held by Department of Chemistry, GITAM School of Science, Bangalore. And the specialty of this conference is the online-based conference. That is the International E-Symposium on New Frontier in Chemical Sciences. It's very beautiful, sir. Mainly when I heard about this conference, I thought how it will be, because I'm in some rural area now presently, and there is a network problem, network issue is there. And this some I heard about only the 2-3 like Dr. Mathukar, his classes session I had seen, and Clifford Glantz and Sir Nikhil Gupta's, and some I had been missed. But all this I had got from GITAM University of a YouTube link, through which I will cover all the sessions, whatever I had missed. And the conference were very beautiful and the knowledgeable, mainly on the present advance in catalysis energy sector and nanomaterials. On these topics are very beautiful, and some whatever I missed that conference, I will go through YouTube link. And the once again, I'll say that the organizer and committee members and GITAM University, that whatever the organize this conference, which activates all researchers mainly, because as this COVID-19 2-3 months, some are in out of mood, but by hearing all this conference, and we'll activate like an impulse of current comes through our body, and we'll reactivate all in the research. So I'm very happy, and the conference were very beautiful, and I'll thank one and all, and mainly for organizer and the GITAM University for conducting all these conferences. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Supra.
Any
One
other?
more participant, Sandesh Kumar. Mr. Sandesh Kumar.
Connect to the Ningaraj.
Ningaraju, you unmute yourself and speak with regarding the symposium.
Good morning, one and all present here in this panel. I am Ningaraju, PhD scholar from Center for Nanomaterial Sciences, Jain University, Bangalore. I am majorly working on the energy area in the production of biodiesel, and I had some of the talks, like all the talks I have been attended. And yesterday, catalysis lecture was very nice by Ganpati Shanbhag sir, and first day was also very nice, and I enjoyed a lot in this E-Symposium. And I thank the convener Ratnamala ma'am and Janardhan sir for giving me an opportunity to attend this E-Symposium on this pandemic time. And I'm very happy that whatever the registration fees you have taken, that is you are giving to some social activities to the society. That is very nice to hear. And I will be happy to take part in any of your conferences or symposiums in future. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Ningaraju, for your words. And one more participant, Sandesh. Okay. Some technical issues from participant side. So I am on to Dr. Ratnamala.
Okay, thank you. Now I request Professor R. Venkatnath, Head of the Department of Chemistry, to give the vote of thanks. Over to Professor R. Venkatnath, please.
Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Venkatnath, Head Department of Chemistry, GITAM School of Science, GITAM deemed to be University, Bangalore campus. My pleasant greetings to one and all. I deem it my privilege to propose the vote of thanks on the occasion of International E-Symposium on New Frontiers in Chemical Sciences with a theme, catalysis, materials, and cybersecurity in chemical sectors. This event is a huge success, and the organizers received laurels from the participants because of the eminent speakers like Dr. Paul Moger, North Carolina State University, USA, Dr. Glanch, Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, Richland, USA, Dr. Tek Murthy Chavali, SKRM, Dr. Nakka Lingaya, Catalysis Division, IICT, Hyderabad, Dr. Radhakrishna Motkuri, Applied Functional Materials Group, Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, Richland, USA, Dr. Ganapati V. Shanbhag, Material Science, Purna Prajna Institute of Scientific Research, Bengaluru, Karnataka, Dr. Shivendu Ranjan, University of Johannesburg, South Africa, Dr. Shri Nikhil Gupta Gauri Shetty, Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, Richland, USA. On this occasion, we would like to place on record my sincere appreciation for the excellent contributions made by all the speakers and spared their valuable time to enlighten the participants by sharing their research expertise. At the outset, I would like to express our gratitude to Sri Bharat, President, GITAM, Professor K. Ramakrishna Rao, Chancellor, GITAM, for their unconditional support. I would like to express our sense of obligation to Professor K. Sivaram Krishna, Vice Chancellor, GITAM, and Professor KVGD Balaji, Registrar, GITAM, for giving us inspiration to conduct such events. I wish to record our heartfelt thanks to Professor Shailendra Dasari, Campus in charge, GITAM Bengaluru, and Professor Dinesh Seth, Director, School of Technology, for all their constant support and guidance. Sir, we are grateful to your both. We convey our sincere thanks to Professor K. Srinivas, Principal, School of Science. Thank you, sir, for your encouragement always. We are extremely grateful to Mr. Vamsi Datla, Director, Admissions and Administration, for being a pillar of support for our efforts. Thank you, sir. The smooth conduct of all technical sessions was possible due to eminent chairs of sessions. I am thankful to all those chairpersons. I would like to express my appreciation to Dr. Ratnamala, convener, and Dr. Janardhan, co-convener, Dr. Venkatatnam, organizing secretary, and Dr. Manjunatha, treasurer, Department of Chemistry, GITAM School of Science, GITAM Bengaluru campus, for successfully organizing and scaling up the event to the new heights. In spite of the lockdown period, we were able to successfully organize the program due to relentless efforts of CATS department, as well as faculty members and supporting staff of chemistry department and other departments. I profusely thank everyone for their efforts. We are indeed delighted to have Akshay Patra Foundation for accepting the registration fee collected from this symposium. As the foundation feeds around 20 lakh children every day across India, most humbly we request them to utilize the amount as part of their services to counter hunger and provide aid in the education of children. Our sincere thanks to print and electronic media for wide coverage of the program. We are thankful to participants for their attentive participation and enthusiasm expressed during interaction with the subject experts in the technical sessions. Lastly, I thank all the heads of departments, faculty members, and staff who have witnessed this event and extended their cooperation. Thank you all once again. We look forward to an extremely productive and encouraging year ahead. Thank you. Over to Dr. Ratnamala, convener.
Madam, please unmute. Thank you, speaker. Thank you.
Unmute.
Unmute yourself. Ratnamala, madam, unmute yourself.
Now the closing moments. After that, our national anthem follows. जनगणमननायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंधु गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल गंगा हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उज्जल जलधि तव शुभ नामे गावे तव आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगल गाहे जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय हे Thank you, one and all. Thank you, one and all. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you,
Professor
Thank
Clifford
you.
Glanch.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, all of
and
you.
have
Thank
a
you,
nice day.
Nikhil. No, for Nikhil, you are
Radhakrishnan,
late.
sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was a
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Bye.
Very nice.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Certificates will be provided to all the registered participants soon.
Within 10 days will be provided. So host can leave the session.
Yeah. If any registrant do not fill the feedback form, don't worry. We'll forward that feedback links to your registered mails. So fill that feedback form. And thank you very much. And good day. Be safe. Stay home. Thank you very much.
Thank you.